Imagine just for a second that you have the opportunity to meet God. Or, well, if not God exactly, something so close to it that the distinction barely even matters.
Right, a consciousness that has been around since before time began.
Exactly. A force that helps spin the very first raw energy of the universe into physical matter.
And, if you're picturing that, you're probably picturing something massive, something that spans entire galaxies.
Oh, absolutely. You're thinking of a nebulous-sized giant, right? Clouds of stardust, a booming voice that shakes the tectonic plates.
Naturally. I mean, that's the Hollywood version.
Well, what if I told you that in our physical reality, this entity describes its actual mass as being smaller than a brown nut,
A nut, like a hazelnut.
literal brown nut, and actually smaller than that?
That's quite the image. It's a little underwhelming, isn't it?
It's chilling, but it's also kind of hilarious. The architect of reality fitting right in your pocket.
It's like finding out the supercomputer that runs the entire simulation is actually a Tamagotchi.
That is definitely one way to put it. But stick with us, because today we are going to explain exactly why that nut is heavier than a black hole. Welcome back to the deep dive.
Thanks for having me again.
Today we are traveling back in time to a Wednesday night, specifically June 26, 1968. We're in Elmira, New York. It's humid out, the windows are probably open, and we are sitting in the living room of Jane Roberts and her husband, Robert Butts.
And for those who follow the Seth Material, they know that this isn't just any Wednesday night. This is the night of session 419.
Specifically from the early sessions, Book 8 of the Seth Material, date of record, June 26, 1968.
Right. And before we dive into the cosmic walnuts and the physics of God consciousness, we need to handle some quick housekeeping.
Always important.
Yeah, so this deep dive is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
We definitely aren't selling you a religion here. We're just exploring a really fascinating historical document.
Exactly. And we want to give full credit where it is absolutely due to the Seth Material and the publisher New Awareness Network. This is profound stuff, and we are just here to help unpack it.
And if you find your mind blown by the end of this hour, and honestly, you owe it to yourself to go directly to the source.
Definitely.
So what is our mission today? We are looking at a session that is, frankly, a little spooky.
Very spooky.
Yeah, but it's not your standard ghost story. It's a lesson in the physics of consciousness. It's a defense of the human ego, which, let's be honest, I usually blame for all my problems.
Don't we all?
Right. And finally, it features a practical experiment where a woman reads a letter with her fingers.
It's a fascinating blend of high metaphysics and gritty practical application. I mean, it starts in the stars and it ends in a mailbox.
I love that. So let's set the scene properly. It is 9:15 p.m. Jane Roberts is about to go into a trance. Now, for the uninitiated, usually Jane speaks for a personality named Seth. And Seth is fun.
Seth is very distinct. He's witty, he's conversational, he's kind of like that eccentric professor who stays late after class to blow your mind.
Maybe while smoking a cigar and drinking a glass of wine.
Exactly. He has a very human flavor to him.
Right. He says good evening, he cracks jokes, but tonight, something is off.
The air in the room just changes.
Yeah. Jane whispers something to her husband, Rob. She just says, the other one.
The other one. Just that phrase alone gives me a shiver.
It sounds like the start of a horror movie. The other one is here.
It really does. But to understand why that is so significant, you have to understand the hierarchy here. Usually Jane channels Seth, but the other one refers to the Seth entity.
Okay, let's unpack that. What is the difference between Seth and the Seth entity?
Think of the Seth entity as the whole self. It is the massive, encompassing Gestalt consciousness. The personality known as Seth, the guy who usually talks, is just a fragment.
Like a spokesperson.
Exactly. A spokesperson or a fingertip of a much larger body.
So usually we get the press secretary. But tonight, the president is walking into the briefing room.
Or the emperor. Because the physical transformation in Jane reflected that shift instantly. She experienced what she called the pyramid effect.
The pyramid effect. What exactly is that?
It's a sensation she describes often in the material. It feels like a heaviness, a distinct geometric pressure of energy that just settles over her.
And when she started speaking, the voice wasn't Seth's usual voice.
Not at all.
The notes from the session describe it as high, very clear but distant. And here's the part that gave me actual goosebumps. Ram described it as emotionless.
That lack of emotion is key here. We associate personality with emotion, right? Warmth, humor, anger, sarcasm.
Yeah, the stuff that makes us human.
But this voice was distinct. It was ending sentences on the upbeat, almost mechanical or musical in a way.
Like a synthesizer.
Maybe not completely robotic, but detached. It creates this uncanny valley feeling. I mean, it's Jane's vocal cords, but the rhythm is all wrong for a human. It's supreme. It's totally indifferent to social niceties.
And usually, Seth starts with, "Good evening, Rupert. Good evening, Joseph." He's polite.
Right.
But this time, silence. No greeting. Just boom, straight into the deep end.
It's incredibly abrupt. The entity launches right into a declaration of identity.
I want to read this opening line because it sets the tone for everything we're about to discuss today. The voice says, "I have told you who we are. The entity had its beginning before the emergence of your time."
Just let that sit for a moment before the emergence of your time.
We aren't talking about a ghost from the Victorian era who wants to tell you where he hid the family silver.
No. We are talking about a consciousness that predates the Big Bang, or at least predates the linear timeline of our specific physical universe.
And notice the pronoun shift there.
Mm-hmm.
I have told you who we are.
Yes, we. This is the concept of the cosmic onion, as I like to call it. The Seth entity isn't a singular guy named Seth. It's a collective.
The text actually says, our entity is composed of multitudinous selves with their own identities.
Think of it like a choir. A choir is made up of distinct sopranos, altos, tenors. Each singer has their own name, their own life, their own unique voice.
Right.
But when they sing together, they are the choir. The Seth entity is the music, but it's composed of these multitudinous individual selves.
So it's a hive mind.
Well, hive mind implies a loss of individuality, like the Borg in Star Trek.
Resistance is futile.
Exactly, but this is different. The source material heavily emphasizes that the selves retain their identities. It's more like a federation, a United Nations of consciousness, where everyone is distinct, but they operate as a single massive unit.
And apparently this federation has been very busy. The source material says they were instrumental in the early formation of energy into physical form.
Right. They aren't just observers hanging out in the void. They are architects. They help set up the stage that we are acting on right now. And they mention they aren't alone, that throughout centuries, other entities like them have appeared and spoken.
This brings up a really confusing but absolutely fascinating point about reincarnation.
Oh, this is a big one.
Yeah, the entity says, Seth, as you know him, will not be reincarnated. But then almost immediately says, other portions of our entity will be born in flesh.
It sounds contradictory at first glance, but it's all about the fragmentation of consciousness. The specific personality mask named Seth, the witty teacher Jane usually channels, is done with physical life.
He's retired from the wheel of karma, so to speak.
He's graduated.
Got his diploma and he's out of there.
Exactly. But the entity, the whole choir still has business here, so it sends other singers down to the stage.
So wait, if we follow this logic, there could be people walking around right now drinking coffee, paying taxes, getting stuck in traffic on the 405, who are technically part of this same massive Seth entity.
That is exactly what it implies. As the source says, what one portion of us knows the other portions of us realize to some extent. It implies a network, a web of connection across realities.
It really makes me look at strangers differently. Like, are you just a guy buying a bagel, or are you a fragment of a primordial entity that helps spin the universe into existence?
And the funny thing is, they might not even know it. They're just living their lives, but on a subconscious level, they are feeding data back to the mothership.
Mothership is a great word for it, which brings us to the most mind-bending visual of this entire session. The mothership isn't a ship, it's a nut.
The brown nut analogy, this is where the physics of the session gets really interesting.
I love this part because it is just so specific. Why a brown nut? Why not a pebble or a grain of sand?
Well, it's earthy, it's organic, it implies a seed, something that has the potential to grow. But listen to the specific phrasing the entity uses. Physically, you would find me a mass smaller than a brown nut, for my energy is so highly concentrated.
So we have this entity that existed before time that creates realities, and physically it's the size of a hazelnut.
But we have to stop thinking about size the way we usually do in our day-to-day lives. In our world, big equals powerful. A skyscraper is powerful, a mountain is powerful, an aircraft carrier is powerful.
Right. If you want to intimidate someone, you don't show up in a Mini Cooper, you show up in a tank.
Exactly. But in physics, and especially in the physics of consciousness as Seth describes it, power is about density.
Give me an example of that.
Think about data storage. Back in the 1950s, a computer with 5 megabytes of storage was the size of a room. It weighed tons. It was big.
And now?
Now, you have a micro SD card the size of your fingernail that can hold a terabyte of data. That is the entire Library of Congress, plus every movie you've ever seen just sitting on your fingertip. Which one is more powerful? The room-size machine or the fingernail chip?
The chip, obviously.
Because the information density is higher. Now take that concept and apply it to consciousness. Seth is saying that his energy is so compressed, so highly focused, that it occupies almost no physical space.
The source text gets really trippy here describing this. It says, this mass exists in intensified mass, entangled and intertwined with moment points.
Entangled and intertwined with moment points. That is a loaded phrase.
It sounds like Star Trek technobabble. Captain, the moment points are entangling. What does that actually mean for us?
A moment point in the Seth Material is essentially a portal. It's the exact point where consciousness transforms into physical matter. It's the now. So when the entity says it is intertwined with moment points, it means this nut isn't just a rock sitting on a table. It acts like a hub.
A hub?
Like a router. It is plugged into every single moment of time simultaneously. It acts like what the entity calls one infinite cell.
An infinite cell. That is a complete paradox.
Existing in endless dimensions at once. So, while it might look small to us in 3D space, a tiny brown nut that's just the tip of the iceberg poking through into our reality, the rest of it is spread out across dimensions we can't even perceive.
So if I saw it on a table and I tried to pick it up,
it might weigh as much as a planet, or your hand might pass right through it. We're talking about a density of energy that completely defies our normal physics.
I love the humor in the source material here, though. After dropping this incredibly heavy physics bomb, the entity actually compares itself to us. It says, you, so large and bulky in your size.
I know, it feels like a subtle burn. You big, clumsy, low-density humans.
Look at you taking up all that space with your arms and legs. How totally inefficient.
It is a bit of a flex from a cosmic entity, but then the entity flips it. It moves from this dry physics description to something incredibly poetic about our relationship to it. It describes us as existing within its memory.
This is the part that I had to read 3 times to really grasp. The quote is, you grow through my memory as a tree grows up through space.
It's a beautiful inversion of how we think memory works. To us, a memory is a snapshot. It's done. I remember what I had for breakfast. That event is finished. I can't go back and eat toast instead of cereal.
Right, it's a read-only file.
But for this entity, its memory is a living environment.
So we aren't just files saved on a hard drive. We are live programs running inside this consciousness.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The text says we are unpredetermined. We aren't finished or completed personalities locked away within that memory. We are growing.
My memory changes as you change.
That implies that for the Seth entity, the past isn't set in stone. Because we are the past to him, or at least contained within his memory. As we make choices today, his memory of us evolves.
That breaks my brain a little bit. It means time isn't a line for him. It's a medium, like soil.
You grow through my memory as a tree grows up through space. Think about that. A tree doesn't just exist, it occupies more space as it grows. It changes the landscape around it. The entity is saying that we, by living our lives, are actively expanding the landscape of God's mind.
Okay, let's try to ELI 5 this, explain it, like I'm 5. Because growing through memory is really hard to visualize for a normal person.
Okay, let's try an analogy. Imagine you are playing a video game, an open-world RPG, like Skyrim or Zelda.
Okay, I'm in. I've got my sword.
The game world exists on the disk or the hard drive. That is the memory. It's a contained environment. The mountains, the trees, the physics engine, that's the structure of the memory.
Got it.
But when you, the player, step into it, is it static?
No, I make choices. I go left instead of right. I fight the dragon or I run away. I accidentally set a village on fire.
Exactly. You are growing through the code. The memory, provides the structure, but you provide the action. And as you play, the save file changes.
So the entity is the console, and we are the players.
The entity is the console, the game disk, and the electricity running it. And it is watching us play, learning from how we play. The game isn't finished until we finish playing it. That's what Seth means. We aren't just recalled facts. We are active agents inside the mind of God.
That actually makes sense, and it's kind of empowering. It means we aren't just puppets on a string. We're playtesters.
We are playtesters for reality.
Okay, let's ground this a little bit. We have this massive consciousness squeezed into a nut, holding us in its living memory. But how is it talking to us? How is it getting through to a random living room in Elmira, New York?
That brings us to Jane Roberts herself, the medium. The entity uses some very technical language to describe what she is actually doing during the trance.
They call her a warp.
Right. Rubert's personality acts like a warp. Just a quick reminder for anyone new, Seth always refers to Jane as Rupert, which is her entity name.
A warp. Or a peephole.
A peephole is a great image. You stand on one side of a solid door, you look through a tiny glass circle, and you see a whole world on the other side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jane's personality is the glass. It's a transparent area through which other areas can be glimpsed. And because she is transparent, information from other dimensions can flow right through her.
But there's a catch.
And this is the thing that surprised me the most, and I really want to dig into this, because it goes against everything I've ever heard about spirituality.
Go on.
Usually when you read about spiritual channeling or enlightenment, whether it's Buddhism, Hinduism, New Age stuff, the advice is always kill the ego.
Right. The ego is the enemy. The ego is the illusion.
Exactly. Get rid of the self so you can be one with the universe.
Yeah.
But here, the Seth entity, this ancient godlike consciousness, defends the ego. It says the strong ego structure was a necessary guard.
I know. It stops you right in your tracks. It sounds completely backward to modern spiritual teachings.
It sounds like an excuse to be a jerk.
Uh-huh.
Sorry I yelled at the waiter. I'm just strengthening my cosmic connection.
Well, not quite. We have to look at why he says it. The entity explains that the energy behind this personality, the other one, is so immense, so raw, that if Jane didn't have a strong ego to hold it in check, it would have swept the temporary psychological structure apart.
So the ego isn't a wall blocking the light.
No. In this specific framework, the ego is a dam. Or a surge protector.
Surge protector, I like that.
Think about it. If you plug a 100,000-volt power line directly into your toaster, what happens?
The toaster explodes, probably takes out the whole kitchen.
Exactly. The toaster, which is Jane's physical brain, cannot handle the raw voltage of the power plant, which is the entity. The ego is the transformer. It steps down that cosmic voltage so it can be communicated safely without shattering the human mind.
So being a bit stubborn, having a strong sense of self, that's actually a safety feature.
In this context, absolutely. The entity explicitly says, so do not berate that ego. It had to be strong to withstand the transparency. If Jane had been egoless or too wishy-washy, the sheer force of the personality flowing through her might have caused a total psychotic break. She needed to be grounded to hold the door open.
I feel totally vindicated. Next time someone tells me I have a big ego, I'm just going to say, I'm protecting my psychological structure from cosmic voltage. Thank you very much.
It's a valid defense, but only if you're actually channeling ancient entities. Otherwise, you might just be being difficult.
Fair point. But it connects back to the history of this entity. Toward the end of the session, the voice mentions that this entity was once part of the old Earth gods.
Just a casual drop. By the way, we used to be gods.
It adds to the sheer scale of what's happening in that living room. This isn't just a parlor trick. It's a connection to the ancient mythological history of humanity, channeled through a woman in the 1960s who was actively being told to appreciate her own ego.
It completely reframes mythology, doesn't it? Maybe the old gods weren't guys with white beards sitting on clouds throwing lightning bolts. Maybe they were these incredibly dense brown nut consciousness clusters, projecting their energy through human warps throughout history.
That is a movie I would absolutely watch.
Now, speaking of parlor tricks versus reality, the session ends. Jane comes out of the trance, and she's very disoriented, by the way. She felt lost in the suspension between herself and the entity.
Which makes total sense. She just had a galaxy squeeze through her mind. I'd need a glass of water and a nap after that.
But we need to fast forward 3 days, June 29th, 1968. Because all this talk about brown nuts and cosmic memories is great theory, but does it work? Can you actually use this warp for anything practical in daily life?
This is the experiment section of our deep dive.
Yeah.
And I love it because it involves something very mundane, the U.S. mail.
It grounds the whole thing perfectly. So the context here. Jane had written a manuscript called Dreams, Astral Projection, and ESP. She sent it to a publisher, Parker Publishing.
And on Saturday, June 29, a card arrives from the publisher.
Now, there's a funny little domestic moment here. Rob, her husband, is painting in his studio. He goes down, gets the mail, sees the card, and he almost decides to prank her.
I love Rob. He's standing there holding the destiny of her book in his hands, and his first thought is, I should mess with her.
Right, because Jane had a dream previously where Rob teased her about a letter from a publisher by waving it from the window. Rob thinks, hey, I can make her dream come true right now by waving this card.
But he decides against it. He plays it cool. He walks in. Jane sees the card, and she immediately says, there's something different about this, isn't there?
Her intuition just kicks right in. Rob suggests an experiment. He says, put your finger on the card and see what impressions you get.
This is Psychometry 101, reading the energy of an object. Now paint the picture for me. Jane hasn't read the card at this point.
No. She sees the return address, so she knows it's from Parker Publishing. But she hasn't seen the other side. She doesn't know what's going on at the publishing house at all.
She touches the card, and she starts rattling off facts.
Let's look at the hits. Hit number 1. They're interested.
Which, okay, lucky guess. Everyone who sends a manuscript hopes a publisher is interested.
Fair enough. Hit number 2. There are 3 people involved.
Harder to guess, but still, maybe a lucky shot. 3 is a common number for a committee.
Hit number 3. They think it's a potential for other books. Again, standard publisher thinking. But then she drops the hammer, the hyper-specific detail. She says, they might want me to cut the first 3 chapters. Not cut them out, but condense them.
Condense the first 3 chapters.
That is oddly specific. That's not a generic, they like it. That is targeted editorial feedback.
And remember, she is holding a card that just says, we received your manuscript. The card didn't say anything about condensing chapters.
Exactly. The card was just a standard form letter.
So is she right?
Well, Rob notes that the card was mailed only days after the script arrived at the publisher, which implies unusual speed. The impression was that they were already discussing it. And later correspondence completely confirmed it. They were indeed interested and had those specific editorial notes about condensing the beginning.
And Jane was in a light trance during this whole card reading. She didn't even fully realize what she was doing until later.
Which brings us back to the warp concept we were just discussing. The exact same mechanism that allows the Seth entity, that cosmic brown nut, to speak through her, allows her to access information about an editor in New York just by touching a piece of paper.
It's the practical application of the physics we talked about.
Exactly. If everything is entangled and intertwined with moment points, as the entity said, then the information about the book isn't over there in New York. It's accessible right here through the warp.
The card is a link, a hyperlink.
Yes. She clicked the link with her finger, and her consciousness essentially downloaded the data from the editor's mind.
It connects all the dots. The brown nut isn't just a metaphor for a god. It's a literal description of how reality is structured. Everything is connected, highly concentrated, and accessible if you have a transparent enough personality to look through the people.
And that's the real takeaway here. The boundaries we see between past and future, between big and small, between me and you, are much more permeable than we think.
And that our egos, our personalities aren't obstacles to be destroyed. They are the lens.
They are the lens. And the window. And the surge protector.
So we've gone from a consciousness older than time to a mailbox in Elmira. We've learned that God fits in a hazelnut, that we are growing through a cosmic memory like a video game character, and that our egos are actually keeping us sane.
It's a lot to process for a Wednesday night.
It really is. I have to ask, though, if we are growing through this entity's memory, and the entity's memory changes as we change, do you think we are the ones remembering, or are we the ones being remembered?
That's the ultimate question, isn't it? If the entity's memory changes as we change, maybe we are rewriting the past of God just by living our lives today. We are the active authors of the divine memory.
Whoa. Okay, I'm going to need to sit with that one for a while. That is heavy.
It's beautiful, though. It means you matter. Your choices actually matter to the cosmos.
If you want to dive deeper into this, and believe me, we only scratched the surface of the surface today, you need to go to the source.
Absolutely. Don't just take our word for it. Study the Seth Material books. Read session 419 in its entirety.
You can find them at the New Awareness Network website and bookstore. That's sethcenter.com/the-early sessions. Go there, get the books, and support the publisher that keeps this incredible material alive. And remember, this deep dive is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
It's absolutely worth the journey.
Until next time, keep your ego strong. It's protecting you from the cosmic voltage. And keep your mind open. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
Goodbye, everyone.